Hello.
Hi, people. Hi, Keiko.
Hi, Michelle. How are you?
I'm really excited for the weekend. It
Yes.
hasn't been a bad week. It's just been full, you know?
Yeah. No, I get that. I was just saying to somebody recently, I feel like the longer that we are in quarantine, working from home and all of that hoopla, the longer these weeks feel like they go. Fair to
Yeah,
say?
I think that's absolutely fair.
Yeah.
This week was a little bit better because I was able to go to the office like twice.
Nice.
Um, so it felt normal for a second. But yeah, I just feel like time is dragging on and it has no meaning. And I think on Tuesday I was like, oh yeah, I have my son this weekend. And I was thinking that I was going to pick him up like that night and take him for the weekend and go to the park. And then I'm like, I have to wake up for work tomorrow.
Oh my gosh.
So I have no idea what time anything is right now.
Yeah. No, it's a struggle. I mean, I think, what was it, Wednesday? I went throughout the whole day and had a few meetings, went to the hair salon. And as I'm sitting at the hair salon, I was like, oh man, I never took anything out for dinner. I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Like, time just like doesn't really factor in for me anymore.
No, it is what it is, but I am thinking ahead a lot about like, I probably need a little bit of a vacation.
Yes.
Um, so I'm going to take some time off towards the end of this month to go back to my family. My mom and my dad were from this area on the Illinois-Iowa border called the Quad Cities. So we're
Okay.
going to go back there. And it's to spread my aunt's ashes. She passed away 10 years ago. But we think it's time to spread her ashes. And then when I come back after that 4-day soiree in Iowa and Illinois, I'm actually going to start doing what you're in the midst of doing, which is potty training my 2-year-old son.
My gosh. I
I'm
will
kind
be here for you every step of the way. Because
Yeah,
even like right now, I don't know if everyone noticed, but we got on a few minutes late and I take full responsibility because, of course, my son wakes up right before we go live, which I feel like this totally flows into the discussion that we're going to have in a few
right.
minutes. But, and I was like, oh, let me go get him so he doesn't pee the bed. Don't worry, he peed the bed.
Good times.
Not to like put him on the spot, but he doesn't seem to care.
No, I don't think he's worried about judgment at all. That's totally the
I don't
norm.
think so either. It's a struggle though. I've heard from so many people that like potty training during quarantine, this is such a great time. But I don't know if any of those women like were working from home while potty training. And if they were, then I would love for them to send me tips.
Well, also though, like they talk about how like once a kid has been potty trained, then any kind of major disruption in their life might cause
Yes.
them to revert. So what happens when they're so used to quarantine and then they go back to like daycare or they all of a sudden get back into their normal routine prior to quarantine? Like, is that going to cause them to revert or not? Like, there's a lot to think about.
Wow, thank you so much for adding that to my
But I mean, I'm working usually when we're doing these with you and Tony, but like I watch them on the down low, and you guys have talked about this before, and you recommended a book called Oh Crap Potty Training. And she talks
Yes.
about the reversion, but she also says if you wait too long, there also might be issues. So I think that it's like
Right.
you either train them now at a really prime time or you wait longer and you have different challenges that you have to deal with. So
Absolutely. Well,
don't feel
that's
bad.
one thing that like I feel like I tell people potty training has been harder on me than it has been on Owen because for me, this is going to come as a shock to people. I am not a patient person. So like having to be patient and put on this like everything's great face, I find so hard when I'm trying to be like, no, it's okay. You can totally go to the potty. But it's like, I feel all this pressure, like, no, you need to get it. You need to understand it. But like, he doesn't understand that. And then I get frustrated with myself.
I will be very interested to see how I do with this.
I will
Because
too, because I hope that I'm not the only one who feels these things.
I can either be like super chill, like, oh, it's fine, whatever. but I don't want to be too chill, because if you do that, then you're not going to be enforcing anything and there's issues there. But also I can get to a point where I just need to kind of control everything. And then I might get into, I call it, and I guess this is kind of what we're going to be talking about, is mom guilt. But like, I get to a point where I'm like, well, I'm not like the other moms and I'm doing a bad job and my son isn't progressing like he should be and like the book said, or I'm not a Pinterest mom. That's kind of what I talk about. And so then it's like, well, I start to get too down on myself. Well, so I really need to make sure that my mental health is in check before I engage in this, because it's going to be, maybe I'm lucky. Maybe I'll get the kid who just gets it and I won't tell you. I won't tell you that he just gets it. I'll make sure that that's not something but he could just be a nightmare.
Tell me, because I want to celebrate his accomplishments for you. So definitely don't hide that. But I got to ask you, so when you get into those like ruts of like mom guilt and getting down on yourself, is there anything that you do? Because our viewers are still a little new to you, although you've been with us for a while. This whole quarantine chat thing is a little new. So is there anything that you do to help yourself kind of get out of that?
Well, I mean, I'll just engage in my regular old coping skills, like trying to read or asking for some extra time to be alone, because my son's father and I live in different houses. And so sometimes I might need a little bit of extra mental time and I'll ask his dad to take him away. But I recite this mantra that this nurse told me when I was in the hospital having my son. And she said, your son doesn't need a perfect mom. Your son needs you. And I like say that back, like there's no such thing as the perfect mom. Right. I see people all the time and I think their lives are perfect or they have no worries or everything's under control, but there's still something underneath that I don't see that they're struggling with. So I try to remind myself that everybody has their thing and I'm just going through mine.
Yeah. No, I get that. And I feel like we're having this conversation and we should just like bring in our guests.
I'm cool with that, because like we're totally getting into it.
Right? I am so sorry for like doing that to you ladies, but I didn't think we were going to just jump into it. But since we're in it, let's just bring you in, Becca and Haley from Poem. How are you?
Well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, ladies, for being here. And if you don't mind telling anyone watching, what does POEM stand for?
POEM stands for Perinatal Outreach and Encouragement for Moms, which can sound kind of vague, but we do a lot of things to kind of help women who are pregnant or parenting get their footing in this whole weird motherhood situation.
Awesome. And so what are some things, like I heard about you guys from, I joined Fit for Mom. And I remember you guys came in, you kind of talked about postpartum. We all had like a great conversation about like, hey, things suck sometimes. So what are some programs that like you guys offer parents?
You want to weigh in, Haley?
We offer, we have support group meetings, online support groups through our Facebook. It's a private Facebook page full of moms at different stages. Some are pregnant, some postpartum, some parenting. And we also, we have started a new program. We are focusing a little bit more also on NICU moms and on RISE moms, which are Black and African-American moms. Try to offer all kinds of different supports, a lot of peer-to-peer support.
Awesome.
And so, like, I know that's not a word a lot of times that people use, right? Like when you say peer, but the thing that makes POEM special is that Haley and I and our coworker Kelly, who are the POEM staff, we are peers to the women we serve. So we're moms. We're moms who have experienced mental health complications through this whole spectrum of pregnancy and parenting. And we're not social workers. Well, at least I'm not. Haley is. But that's not the role we play. We're not playing the role of a social worker. We're there to listen. We're there to be somebody that understands your experience because you need that. You need it. And then we're also there to hook you up with the things that you need to be well and healthy. And so that can mean a support meeting. Some moms love support meetings. Some moms don't really dig it that much, and they just really want some clinical care. And one of the most important things we do is connect moms with counseling and medication management if they need it, and kind of talk them through that decision making, because as we all know, it's hard to make treatment decisions or mental health decisions when you're postpartum or pregnant. So yeah, I mean, that's really what we do. We want to find out what you need and help you get it so that you can feel well.
Awesome. And I love that you focus, like, you don't just focus on moms who are pregnant or moms who just had baby, but like, for instance, Michelle and I, our boys are 2. And here we are talking about like feeling this whole mom guilt of like being at home and am I doing enough? I love that you focus on that too.
Yeah. And I think that's, I mean, while I can tell you, I've been working with Poem now for ever since I used the program myself. So I had a baby almost 8 years ago. It was my first child. And I experienced postpartum depression, anxiety, and it was horrifying and difficult. And I was completely alone, didn't have any family around. It was really tough. And I reached out to Poem, and basically the program saved my life. So I started volunteering, and since then, about a year and a half ago, I actually got like a real job with Poem, and have been doing this since then. But I can tell you, RE mom guilt, that is probably in the top 3 conversation points of things we talk to moms about right now. Yes, in a very major way. And I think it is a huge trend. And I think Haley would agree with me on that. In our conversations with moms, is just helping our moms process some of that and being a listening ear, because we all need one right now.
Oh, absolutely. Now, what are some other things that moms are kind of calling in and concerned about?
I think that postpartum is hard enough.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a postpartum mom, there is nothing more harrowing than bringing a human into this world. It's hard. And you throw complete isolation, lack of access to family, lack of access to care, overwhelmed community resources. So there is really no worse time in this country to have a baby. So I would say, in addition to the mom guilt, it's just moms are very isolated. I led a support group earlier this week where it was just the isolation. We talked about the isolation is killing me. And then I wonder, am I overreacting as a mom?
Yeah.
Do I really need to protect me and my family this much?
Well, and I think the isolation in the home is kind of easy for us to think about because everybody's isolated in their homes. But I was on some other mom groups and stuff, and there was someone who was talking about how they're going into their appointments to find, like, because they're pregnant, and they can't have their partner back there with them to like see the gender of their baby. They can't figure out all of those things together, and they have to go in alone, and that's awful. Especially for the big appointments, I always had someone there with me.
Right.
And so that's got to be isolating too.
Yeah. And I will tell you, one of our other staff member, Kelly, who also is coordinating the RISE program for Black and African American moms, she's also a doula. And that has been interesting to kind of see how that has unfolded for her. She did her first virtual doula session the other day. During labor, like labor doula session. So that's not only hard, it's also a fundamental problem in care for women right now, even family support as well as birth support.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if you can speak to this, but how does that work exactly? Because from what I know about doulas, like, don't they have to like physically be there to kind of help you through that?
Well, I had a doula for my second.
Okay.
She was wonderful. And she didn't even touch me that much. Not because I didn't want her to, but just because she knew what to say. She knew how to guide me toward those things. She knew, to offer me suggestions when I was laboring and I was miserable, and she knew, okay, maybe these things are going to help. Right. So, yes, I don't think that you can offer the entirety of a labor doula service to a person remotely. Not at all. No.
Right.
But I can say that I think there's validity in still having that if doulas can't be in the room, that they can, having them virtually in the room is still something of a service.
Right. So what, I'm trying to figure out how to word this. What kind of like tools can you offer to moms who are like, so words, right? So I struggle with like my 2-year-old's home with me. I'm obviously working from home, but my husband is out. He works in the news, so he has to go out to work every single day. How can you help me? And I don't want people thinking I'm calling out my husband, but help me kind of explain to him how like it's very isolating, but those chances that I do get to go out, like they also make me nervous. So like, do you have any tips on how to help partners understand?
That's a tough one. I think that like just trying to balance it all together, it's hard on like kind of both sides, and having those conversations is important. But right now I think that it's so much more stressful on mom and dad because you're trying to figure out how to help each other, but still get what you need to get done. So that's a tough one, a really tough one.
Yeah, I agree. It's a hard conversation, and I really it's so hard to talk about the way moms feel about being moms to non-gestational partners.
Yes.
Because there is a thing that happens to your brain. It's like, I describe this a lot, and this relates, I promise. I'll try not to be too long-winded, but there's this thing that happens, when you have this baby, that you feel their things, all of their, they sigh, they sneeze, you wake up, like there is if you carried a baby in your body, whether you're a mom or you're not a mom, you know what that feels like. And I think there's an inherent piece of that. Like, they say mom guilt comes with the placenta, right? And I think that that's true to some degree. And maybe we identify it as mom guilt, but we also identify it as being responsible for everybody. And I feel like a lot of us feel like we need to be responsible. Like if we don't, then something bad's going to happen. Like if we aren't the ones to make sure we stay home or keep our families safe, or, make sure our kids eat vegetables, or, do those kinds of things. I think that we tend to shoulder that burden partially because that's a cultural burden that has been placed upon us unfairly for centuries, but also because we inherently feel that way, that we should be doing that. And so I think that, like my husband and I have a really good split, with things. We're really able to do that. And yesterday I said to him, I need to go for a walk, but I feel guilty about it. So I just said it, and I think that open communication matters. I think that I need to tell him when there's something I think I should do for my self-care, but I don't feel right about it. So can we talk about it? No, he's not my counselor, but.
Right.
So this is like preaching to my soul. Because, well, first of all, when you were talking, you made me think of, so when quarantine occurred, the first like 3.5, 4 weeks, I had my son over every day, and his father and I are in separate houses. I think I said that, I don't remember. But so, even on my days that I had off, he would still come over and I would see him, and I'd be trying to do things like this, or I'd do trainings, or I would do whatever, and he would want to type on my computer. He would want to do this, do that. And so I was starting to slip in my performance. I was starting to forget a lot of things, which honestly I'm still recovering from. And I was starting to have mental breakdowns. And so I had to make a decision, because he goes to an in-home babysitter, and she still had just a couple kids at her place. And I had to decide, should I take him back? If I take him back to his daycare, does that make me a bad mom? Because I'm putting my career first, ? But really it's more like, if I start failing too much, eventually wouldn't it get to a point where I could be fired? my boss is super cool, but like those are the things that are going through my head. Like, do I put my livelihood at risk just to be a good mom, or do I send him to a place that I know is safe, everybody's taking as much precaution as they can, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, that was a huge moment for me to have to decide to send him back. And I felt so bad because I was essentially choosing my job over my kid. So that was the first thing that you said that just made me go, oh my God.
Michelle, I've heard that story. You're not the first person to say that. I mean, Haley and I hear that every day, that weighing of what the right choice is. And the answer is there is no right choice right now, because literally every individual is living in their own skin. You know, we're all living our own lives. We all have different needs. You know, my mental health tends to come fairly top of the line because that's something I struggle with every day. And it's something I need to maintain that in order to function as a parent and as a person. Right. So like, you're not the only one. And I certainly made that decision a couple of weeks ago too, for our kids. And I still feel weird about it. If I'm being real, I just don't feel right about it. But I also don't feel right about being able to provide people the kind of support they need and keep my job and keep my house. Right.
It's like you got to practice what you preach type of thing, right?
Yeah. There is no right answer though. And there's also no shame, you know, like I think we, you know, I think we've spent a lot of years, especially in social media, shaming each other about how we do things that I don't think now is a good time to do that. Or ever, really.
I feel like I shame myself more than anybody has ever. I don't even know if anybody's ever truly shamed me, at least to my face. And so I think that I shame myself way more than anybody else ever would. I don't know how everybody else feels.
I would say that's one of the awesome things about support groups is last Monday we had one of our support group meetings that I was able to facilitate, and every mom on the meeting was talking about that same thing of like managing your household and taking care of your babies and working. And one mom even went as far to share is that her employer kind of chastised her for hearing her son in the background during a quality control call. And all of the other moms were, of course, like furious because, you know, you have to take care of your children. Like, can you imagine the opposite? Had she not gotten up and cared for her children and something, you know, God forbid something horrible happened, and then she's a horrible mom for not checking her kids. So it's that's one great thing about support groups is just finding that support and hearing other moms kind of say, you know, encourage you and support you and tell you that, you know, we're in this together. We're all trying to figure it out together.
Right. That you're not alone. I mean, there's that old saying, right? Like it takes a village. Yes. And I never realized how true that was until I had a kid, and I was like, all right, well, like, does anybody else feel this? And it's like, yeah, majority of us feel that way. Like, majority of us share this, like, mom guilt, or, you know, there's so many posts that I see moms posting about, you know, oh, we chose to send our kids back to school, or we chose to homeschool. And then at the end of it, it's, please don't come at me. And I'm just like, it's so sad that like we all have to say, please don't come at me for a decision that you're making to do essentially what's best for you, what's best for your mental health, what's best for your family. Yeah,
I think what people need to hear is you're a great mom. Yeah. That's what they need to hear. Great job advocating for your needs and the needs of your family. Like that's what needs to be said. I mean, that's the kind of stuff we need to hear. I need to hear it, right? Like I tell people this all day. I can say it all I want, but I need somebody to say it to me sometimes too, you know?
Right. So I'm going to recommend that we get a recording of you saying you're a great mom. And then I'm going to like program it into my watch or into something so I can just push it whenever I need to hear it.
Well, then you can say it back to me so that I can have someone else say it to me.
Absolutely.
I mean, like a little chain going.
Right. Yeah, I think there's a lot of conversation too that this whole COVID situation has brought up for us about kind of the unrealistic expectations of parents and kind of the standards that we're holding people to in 2020. And, you know, when you say it takes a village doesn't look the same anymore. And I think we as women have to take charge and say, okay, so what's my village going to look like? And I think that needs to be a prenatal discussion. Like, what kind of village do I have, and how can I create that for myself, or how can I ask people to help me create it? Because for some of us, more of us live away from our families, and do our work, live according to our work. And I just think it's important to figure out what your village looks like before baby comes.
So what do you do if the baby's here and you still don't know what your village looks like?
You come to a poem support meeting.
I wasn't going for that, but that was such a beautiful plug. Like,
that's great.
That was beautiful.
Well, and to be very clear, we are a nonprofit. We only do this because we love moms. We do this because this is the work that we want to do.
Right before we got on, I was talking with you, Becca, about how like I didn't even know that this place existed until Keiko said, "Hey, we're going to do a thing." And I think that that's unacceptable, because this should have been told to me way early on. Like, they give you a packet at the hospital.
Right now?
Huh?
Are you yelling at me?
Yeah. Keiko should have told me about this like forever ago. But like, they give you this huge packet at the hospital when you have a kid, and it's got all kinds of information. And it's like, why didn't I hear about this? As soon as this is over, I'm going to like your page. I'm going to try to get a part of the group. Like, this is the kind of support that I need, but I just haven't been able to find in a good place.
Well, and I will say, there are so many mom groups. And I will tell you also, like, Poem really is geared toward pregnant and postpartum women and women with young children. I mean, that's our peer support is most appropriate for that group of people. But basically, we work with any mom if she needs some services. So like, she may not find it as useful to be in a group with a bunch of moms talking about postpartum depression if she's got a 7-year-old. But there are other things that we provide to moms, like, again, those links to counseling, those links to other community resources, ideas for how to connect with other people. Our Facebook group that, again, we have moms with kids of all ages in that group. So that's a support option for everyone. And they talk about kid things of all ages. It's not just babies or pregnancy. So, yeah, I mean, they do provide it. And that's, I guess, what I want to say is that, now we've kind of become the place in Columbus to go for postpartum and pregnancy mental health support. And they do provide that information at all the hospitals now. I actually got my pamphlet from OSU Wexner Medical Center when I delivered my first, and they sent me with that information. But do you read all of it? Do you go through that 400-page folder? I'm sorry. I mean, like, that's great and all, but
just read the packet when the baby sleeps.
I don't know about you guys.
You don't have anything else to do while the baby is sleeping.
Tired. I wasn't reading anything that was longer than three words.
I didn't even answer my texts. Like, so I don't think that's realistic either. But I do think that it's one of those things where, how they make you watch all those videos after you have a baby at the hospital. I really do think that the mental health component needs to be part of that.
Okay. Real quick, like, trigger memory. They were like, okay, everything's done, time to go home. We were literally getting ready to leave, and they're like, oh, we forgot to show you a video. And right before I left the hospital, they showed me the video about like sudden infant death. And I'm like, okay, thanks for that. Guess I'll leave after you putting that in front of me. That was terrifying. And then they're just like, bye, have fun raising a kid. That was so terrifying.
No, see, I had my son when I was in Vermont. And I remember them very much so speaking about postpartum. And I remember going home and I was like, I got this. I can do this. And then I went to like that first appointment and I was like, okay, I'm struggling. But then literally, I think like 2 days, I moved to Ohio, where I didn't have any family anymore. I didn't have a job. So like, not only am I now a new mom, I am now starting a new career. I am now in a totally different place. And I was also planning a wedding. And I was just like, But what I struggled with, and I knew that I had it, and I knew I had postpartum depression. I knew, like, my husband knew it. We had that conversation. But I struggled so much with, like, telling other people, like, hey, it's not that I don't want to come hang out with you or I don't want to talk to you. I just can't. So how would you explain to those new moms, or even not new moms, because I mean, my son was like 6 months at that time. So how would you help those moms kind of explain to other people about postpartum and like, hey, this is what's going on with me?
Well, I would really, there's really a couple factors there, right? Like the way you talk to your parents about why you don't want them to do something a certain way when they come over to your house, and the way you talk to your friend about why you don't want to hang out. I mean, I think there's a lot of different ways that that you have to think about that as a mom who's dealing with a mental health complication. But I will say that the one thing that we say most often in group and all around is that we tend to sideline our own needs the minute baby comes out, right? And we tend to feel even more guilt for doing things even that aren't baby related, like right during that period. So like telling people we don't want to do things, or not feeling like we want to be part of things, or wanting time alone. I think it's so much harder to have those conversations then. So it's just advocate for yourself, and it's okay. There's no wrong way to do postpartum.
Right.
You know, postpartum is a period. It is not a mental health condition. So a lot of people say, I've got postpartum, like postpartum depression and anxiety. It's because we don't want postpartum necessarily to be this like bad word.
Right.
And we want people to understand the challenges of having postpartum depression and anxiety or other mood disorders, like postpartum OCD. That's something that's super common that people don't talk about. And I just think that having those conversations with people and really advocating for whatever your needs are at that moment, and saying you don't have to understand, but this is what I need right now, and I'm going to spell it out for you super clear.
Now, you just mentioned postpartum OCD. What is that for people who don't know?
Hey, I think I missed Haley though. Haley, were you going to say something?
Oh no, you're fine. Go ahead.
Well, I'm not a clinician, right? Like, I was a data analyst before I did this work, so let's just put that out there. But as far as postpartum OCD, and a lot of the moms that we work with who experience postpartum OCD are experiencing intrusive thoughts. That's like one of the landmark symptoms of postpartum OCD. And intrusive thoughts are kind of these really scary thoughts that pop into your brain. And sometimes they're related to self-harm. Sometimes they're related to other harm. Sometimes they're related to safety. Worry, like when you worry about your child's safety, like all the time, like you're obsessed with it, or maybe you go to great lengths to try and avoid doing things that might actually be kind of safe, but you're worried about those things. So that's like postpartum anxiety kind of, there's a spectrum, right, of maternal mental health complications. But postpartum OCD is usually really related to intrusive thoughts, and they kind of pop up and scare you and make you feel like a horrible person. But they're not at will thoughts, right? And that's one of the things that we talk to moms a lot about, is accepting those thoughts and learning how to work through them.
That's really interesting. I just, because my job is working with the topic of suicide and suicide prevention and things like that, because that's where we're from. But, I've just never thought of, you said that with OCD, postpartum OCD, you might have intrusive thoughts of harm or intrusive thoughts of for yourself or for other people. And, with suicidal ideation, it's very similar. Some of those thoughts are not typically welcome. They just kind of show up and almost convince you of things. And so that's just very interesting to hear OCD explained that way. I've never heard that.
Well, and postpartum OCD is its own animal. I mean, to be fair. But I will say that one very important thing about this discussion about intrusive thoughts, right, is with postpartum OCD. I can't speak to it in general OCD. I'm not any expert or anything, but I can say that we always share with moms, if your intrusive thoughts scare you, if they're not real, they're thoughts, they pop up and they make you feel terrible, but they're scary, then that's a good sign. That's a good sign that you're not experiencing psychosis. There's nothing going on in that realm there. You are experiencing something that's not okay and not normal. And, you don't have to go through that, but intrusive thoughts are not an indication that you're going to hurt your baby, hurt yourself, or hurt somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, Keiko, you mentioned like for moms that have a hard time just coming out and saying how they're feeling or talking to other people. I strongly encourage like all moms, like new moms, to make sure you're staying on track with like those 6-week appointments, because even though like physically you may feel fine, like there's the screening tools, and some of the questions are not worded maybe in a way that every mother would understand, but I think that clinicians are starting to focus more on screening those and like saying, hey, this question raised a little alarm, like let's check in with this mom. Mm-hmm. And just even when you have friends and family members that have babies, I think people get so caught up in, oh, congratulations, your baby's beautiful, which is all probably very true. But, mom, how are you? Not just how's baby doing, but mom, how are you doing? Like, because sometimes like we may not say it to somebody just outright, but if someone asks like, hey, mom, how are you? Like that might be the day or the time that you're able to say, I'm not okay, or things are a little different or a lot different than I thought they would be.
Right. And we know how important, we all work in this mental health field. We all know how extremely important just a simple, hey, how are you is. I think like maybe it was like a week ago, we wrote on our Facebook, like, hey, tell us how your mental health is, like using these hearts. And for some of those people that like said that they were struggling when we talked to them, they were like, just having someone ask me how I'm doing just means the world. And that's all they needed. It's just like someone to kind of check in with them. And that just meant so much. And I think that kind of gets lost, especially right now with COVID and everything going on. Like we're all so worried about the what ifs and, the grocery store not having disinfectant wipes or toilet paper, that like we got to check in on each other and like make sure like, hey, are you doing okay? What's going on?
Well, and that's what we do like at Poem. And that's one thing that I talk about really often when we talk to medical professionals and we do presentations is for some moms, all we do is call them every week and ask them how they're doing. Mm-hmm. And for some moms, that's all they want. Right. That's all they need, because we might be the only people asking them that question.
Right.
And I think that what you're saying, Keiko, is so valid and important, that people need to be asked. People need to be checked in on. And for some of our clients, that's the service we provide. We check on them. We make sure they're okay. We ask them how they are.
Mm-hmm. And can I soapbox for just a second about that? So I think that sometimes it's great, like you were saying, everything you said, I agree. But I also think that, just asking, hearing someone's response and going, okay, cool, bye, like regardless of the response is kind of strange, because we do that a lot though. It's just like, hey, Becca, how are you? And what are you typically going to say?
Oh, I'm pretty...
How about this?
I'm
what
pretty
does the
honest.
average person say?
I think most people would say, oh, I'm okay. I'm fine.
I'm okay. I'm good. Yeah. And so, and a lot of us just go, oh, cool, bye. But are they good? Are they fine? I have said that and not meant it so many times. And so I heard this really beautiful trick from someone where if something's good, you just say, oh, great. So tell me something that's going well, Tell me a little bit more about that. And if there's lying through their teeth, they're not going to be able to come up with that. And then you'll see, okay, this person really is struggling, and maybe I need to check in with them a little bit more. So I think that sometimes it needs to be taken just a step further, because people oftentimes just lie about how they're doing because they're afraid of people's reactions.
Oh, certainly.
Yeah. One of the things that I heard, and I think it came up during one of these quarantine chats, and I don't remember who it was. So if that person is watching, I am so sorry that I don't remember who said this. But one of the tools that they said was like, before you start to unload onto somebody, just ask them like, hey, do you have the capacity for this right now? Because like we've all got so much going on. And I know I've started using that. Like, okay, I really need to like let this out. Like, do you have the A, time, and B, like mental capacity for me to just kind of unload everything onto you? And I love that tool.
Yeah.
I like both of those ideas. I think I'm going to borrow them. Because I really love the idea of asking for something specific, because I feel like that's active listening, right? You're showing somebody that you're interested and you're listening to what they're saying. Oh, it's going well? Then tell me about something that's going well. I love that idea. And that's actually something we do, we employ, right? Like active listening is one of the biggest things we do as peer supporters. But I do think that, having those conversations and taking things a step further is really important.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. Are there any other kind of tools to help moms? I mean, I think we've discussed like moms being open. What are some like good, I want to say, I'll call it self-care tips that you've been offering to moms who've been kind of calling in saying they've been struggling with their mental health during everything?
I would say that self-care is a word that kind of gets me sometimes, right? Because I don't think a lot of people think about self-care, like what self-care really is.
Right.
And sometimes self-care is saying no. Like, I don't feel like a lot of folks think about self-care that way. They think about like a spa treatment or like, a nap or, sometimes self-care is not like that. Sometimes self-care is setting a boundary with somebody that is creating unrest in your life at a time where you can't handle that.
Yes.
So, I think that we have to redefine self-care and make sure that people understand that self-care looks a lot of different ways and it's okay to do that. But, I will share, I still work with a counselor. I probably will forever. I tell people that all the time because I just think they're the best people on earth. Absolutely. And I feel like everybody can benefit from talking to a counselor. But I think that, building in time for self-care is important, but it's so hard when you have like 3 people, little tiny people yelling your name, mom, 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 mom,
And you're like, that's not my name.
So I'm sure you're sitting there thinking about self-care while your kid's sticking his hand in his diaper. And, like, you're not doing that. We're not doing that. We don't have time for that, So I think one of the biggest tools that I suggest to moms and that I use myself all the time is scheduled time away, which is, I don't go anywhere, right? Like this is a pandemic. I'm not like going out shopping or anything, but I schedule a night for myself every week. Okay. And that night every week, I do nothing. I put on my headphones so I can't hear their little screamy voices, noise canceling headphones, earbuds. And like the other day I watched Dexter for like 3 hours.
Oh,
it was divine.
Nice.
And I think it's because of look, we don't all have a million resources. We can't all go out and do a bunch of things, but we also may not have childcare or a partner with us to care for our child when our child is with us. That is a privilege. It is not something that everybody has. So I think it's just really important to talk to people about, that's why it's important that this is individualized. You talk to somebody about what their resources are, what their life looks like, and help them build in self-care that is possible for them. And because you can't tell everybody to take a night off every week, right? Like, I love that idea for myself. I think scheduled time away is a broader perspective, right? If you can do that. But I think it's really important for moms to think about, okay, what can I do for myself in my limited capacity for whatever's going on in my life? And how can I plan and schedule time for me to do that?
So I like your coping skill or your but I would like to hear, like, what is everybody else's? So, like, first of all,
I was just gonna ask that. Get out of my brain.
Well, I was going to ask you specifically specifically, but also like the people who are watching, you know, what are the things that you do for self-care, especially those with kids. But Keiko, what do you do to get that time for yourself?
So I feel like I love that idea of like sometimes self-care is just setting that boundary. And I didn't even think that like sometimes when I'm telling someone like, listen, I just can't with you right this second. Like I can't talk to you. I didn't think of that as self-care. So I'll say that I've done that. Yeah. really, really into this video game we're looking at. But something so simple, and I thought of it this morning. I actually, my husband was here for a little bit in the morning, so I was like, listen, I've got to drop something off at a girlfriend's house, and I got in the car at like 8:00 in the morning, and I rolled down all of my windows. I blasted some country music, and I drank my coffee, and I was just like driving. I was like, this feels amazing. Like,
Keiko,
why haven't I been doing this more?
You listen to country music?
I was thinking that too.
Randomly, like the weather has to be really nice. I have to be in that mood. But like today, I was in that mood.
I just
like, wow, this feels great.
Everybody I know is like, I love music, but I hate country. And so to hear that you listen to it just makes my heart feel so good.
I'm glad I could help.
I was going to say, I think parking lots, if you can find at least 3 moms sitting in silence in a random parking lot anywhere in the city, you know, like just, that's what I would just sit there because it was quiet and nobody was there. And, you know, I would say, I got to run to the store and I'd go get whatever I need. And I'd sit in the parking lot for like 20 minutes.
Or like right after I put my son down for a nap, I'll like go into my bedroom and just lay in my bed for 5 minutes. It's like I'm allowed to do whatever I want because it's quiet, and like I just kind of decompress, and I'm like, all right, I'm good to go. Now I go back to work.
Yeah. Haley, what do you do? What do you do for self-care? Because I don't know. What do you do?
So I have a big boundary. Like my kids know, like I am serious about like personal shower time. Like there's always shower interruptions. So like one boundary is kids cannot bother me in the shower. Like
I love that.
No kids. And then another thing I do is there's a bedtime, like 9:30, like after 9:30 is my time. Like, so you don't have to go to sleep. You can talk amongst yourselves, you know, but nobody gets up after 9:30. Yeah. Nobody gets up after 9:30. And then I write like, it's for me, like when I got a whole lot of stuff in my head, it helps me so much to get it down on paper. And then like, somehow like in the midst of writing, like I feel like I can come up with all these solutions. So I'm like, oh, like I'm really, really struggling with this. But when I'm writing, like I can't think out the solutions, but I can write out solutions. So that's just one of my things. Then I love support groups. Like I need to hear from other moms or other people that like they're having challenges and they can figure out or they can find some way around those challenges. I need to hear that. Like I need to hear I think like inspiring or encouraging stories.
Yeah, like a sounding board almost.
Yes.
So with when my son goes to bed at night, we usually have the same routine. It's like bubble bath, get your jammies, let's read like 700 Spider-Man books, and then let's go to bed. And then after he's down, it's usually around 8:30 or so. And so then I go into my room. Sometimes I'll take like a shower and do some face masks, and then I'll sit on my bed. I'll let the face mask do its thing. I'll read a book, and then I'll wash off the face mask, and then I'll just like sit in my room by myself in the quiet or listen to an audiobook or whatever. But like, it's not a lot, but doing those face masks every few days is really nice for me.
Yeah. Well, I feel like it gives you a moment to like, it gives you a reason to just pause and like slow down. And like listening to all of our self-care, I feel like that's really what I'm going to say moms, but I'm sure that there's dads that need this too. So I don't want to like push them aside, but like, I feel like that's what we all need to do sometimes is just like quiet down and just pause.
Well, and that's a ritual, right? Like the idea of the face mask, like whether it was the face mask or it was something else, or it's the writing, or there is comfort in ritual things or things we can count on, right? Because we can't count on anything right now. So to have those little things that we know we get every little bit, I think is so important.
Yeah.
I'll say one other thing that I thought of that I do, and it's more of a recent thing, like since quarantine, is I give myself little pats on the back for what I've gotten done in that day. Like I have 4 kids and working from home. So like, I feel like no matter what, at the end of the day, there's always at least 5 to 7 things that I didn't get done that I wanted to do. So instead of thinking about that, like I always try to say, well, everybody ate today, everybody got maybe not clothes on, but everybody had half of their clothes on today. Like I just got to give myself credit for the little things that did get done.
Well, I think like, I've read a study before that like when you pick out just those little things that are like victories, then you start like picking up on like other victories, whether they're big or small, but it kind of helps like open your eyes to it almost.
So, go ahead.
No, I'm reading this comment. Sorry. Shani says, as a single parent, reading and color street nails are things I can squeeze in during the evening quiet time. Ooh, I love that.
Oh, yeah. Do it, Shani.
Yeah.
See, and the reading, I'm going to plug it again. And audiobooks are my savior, especially when I'm driving or just doing something kind of monotonous. I can listen to it while I'm also doing something else. And so it's a nice way to kind of sneak in that reading. But some of what we're talking about reminds me, there's this book I read a long time ago called The 4 Agreements. And it's so good. There's just 4 agreements, like be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally, don't make assumptions, blah, blah, blah. Read the book. It's really great. But the last one is always do your best. And that might sound like a perfectionist thing to say, but he cites that your best is different moment to moment. If you're super tired and you have been super stressed, then your best is going to look different than when you are well rested, well fed, feeling yourself, whatever. And so, like when you were talking about these are the things I did, I think that my mom guilt brain would say, oh, your kid was only half dressed today. But you're like, no, my kid was half dressed. Yay me. Because in that moment, that's the best that everybody could do. And that's fine. And so that's kind of what reminded me of this always do your best thing. Because sometimes I think I hold myself to the standard of what my best should be at my best. And if I don't reach that, which guess what? I almost never do.
Right.
Then I feel like I'm the worst. I should, and everybody else does better and I don't. And it just sends me into a shame spiral.
Oh yeah. And that spiral takes you to a very low place. Like I feel like if you don't get on the spiral at the top,
right.
Then you don't go there. But if you get on it, it's hard to rebound.
Yeah.
And I mean, comparison is like the thief of joy, right? Like, you guys are talking about, like they had half their clothes on. Majority of the time my kid doesn't even have clothes on, so like that's a huge win.
But
like,
you are crap potty training and they are supposed to be naked a lot, so
you won. You did it.
I won't lie, even before that, if we were just home, whatever, have at it. Sometimes my coffee being hot is just more important than my kid wearing clothes, and that's okay, because like I feel like social media also plays into that. Like, I think it can be so beneficial in these situations, but like, especially in quarantine, it's like, oh, well, they're going out and they're doing this with their kid. And, well, I haven't taught my kid the ABCs. Like, how are they doing that?
Sorry.
That is why I follow Celeste Barber. That is why.
Oh my God, I love her. Yes.
Because Celeste Barber keeps it real.
Yes.
Sometimes it is just completely out there, but I'm like, your body looks like my body. I feel like a human being right now, or you're doing this thing, I feel okay about it. Like that representation matters.
Well, and like what you just said, Keiko, I see these memes being shared on social media that's like, your kid always comes first and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, I always share it, but I understand the spirit of this meme. Yes, your kid is so important. But honestly, I feel like I have to come first because if I'm not okay, he's not going to have a good mom. And so I need to take care of myself. But I understand that meme, but I just think that putting yourself last all the time because it's like you being some sort of a saint or whatever, or martyr. It's just not going to be good for you.
Well, and I feel like our as mothers, our putting ourselves first is really still putting ourselves second anyway. Like, you know, like I think that's the default, right? Like that we're going to do that anyway. So we might as well fool ourselves into thinking we're putting ourselves first.
Like Keiko's saying
that we need.
I'm like,
ourselves.
well, I get to do a face mask every couple days, and Keiko's like, well, I get to sit in my bed for 5 minutes. I mean, it works, but yeah, you're right. Yeah.
That made me think of a meme I saw that said, I always wondered why Mama Bear's porridge was cold. Like, I don't know if you ever seen that with the 3 bears, like always cold.
Now I get it.
Life. Eating everybody's leftovers, eating their crusty pancakes sitting on the table that they didn't finish.
Never having like your plate to yourself.
Yep.
Anything to yourself. I feel that. So, real quick, where can people find all of these resources that you've mentioned that you offer?
So we are within the agency Mental Health America of Ohio. So our website is actually through the MHA Ohio website. So you can access it on that link that appears to be up there. And that is where things are kind of, that's kind of the central location for information, but our social media is pretty busy. Like we always add reminders for our support groups there. We share, you know, any current, you know, advocacy information, stuff going on in maternal mental health, but also just things that are really mom related that make you feel a little less alone, that make you feel more connected. But we, most of the time, we'll share our program updates through our social media too. So social media, Facebook, poem.moms, and Instagram, poem_Ohio. And those are all good places to get in touch with us too. You can message us through those platforms. We will basically take any if it's a text, our support line, you can call or text our support line. You can message us on Facebook. You can message us on Instagram. You can do all of those things.
I totally just liked your Facebook page.
Okay.
So is there any last thing that people should know about maternal mental health? As it looks like I'm in a rave right now.
You got a little strobe going on. I don't know. What do you think, Kaylee? Is there anything you would say?
I would just say don't hesitate to reach out if things feel like, you know, they're a little questionable or they don't feel great. Even if you reach out and feel like you end up not needing our support, we'd rather you know, at least get in contact so that we can, you know, talk to you through that day, or you know, and if you know a mom that's struggling and you talk with her and she's willing to talk with us, like I think that at least just talking to sometimes, even if it's at one time, might be super beneficial for a mom.
Yeah. Reaching out. I mean, you are never alone. You may think you are. It may feel like you are, but you aren't.
I love that. I love this. This has been such a great conversation. Like, I cannot thank you ladies so much. I'm not really sure who benefited
really
more,
pleasant.
me and Michelle, or like our viewers.
Yeah.
Well, you can call us too anytime. Give us a buzz.
Thank you so much, ladies. We appreciate your time so much.
Thanks for having us.
Have a good weekend.
Bye, everybody.